Independent Film Forum is coming to you from the Studio 809 Community Podcast Studio at the Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs. Hello and welcome to Independent Film Forum. I'm your host, Ralph Giordano, and I'm the Festival Director for the Independent Film Society of Colorado, a local nonprofit in Colorado Springs. And we serve all of Colorado, but specifically the Pikes Peak region. And today, my three guests are currently attending Colorado College in the film program, which is the Film and Media Studies program. And I'd like to welcome Jesse, I'd like to welcome Josh, and Ollie.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, definitely. How long have the three of you been working together on projects?
2 years?
Yeah, I'd say probably about 2 years now. Actually doing stuff together.
Because we've had class together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before.
We had a class together sophomore year. It was a storytelling through sound class.
Yeah.
So we kicked it off.
Yeah.
And we just connected there. And
So we're going to talk about a specific project here in a minute, but how many films have you worked on collectively together?
I think.
We've worked on some smaller projects together, some spec ad treatments and whatnot. But this is
definitely
our first kind of biggest long long form project. Yeah.
But you're all filmmakers.
Yeah.
You all make film.
Yeah.
Good, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So Jesse, I know you basically as a narrative filmmaker, short filmmaker. You've been part of our film festival, Colorado Short Circuit, for a couple of years. Wonderful work. This project that we're going to talk about today is a documentary. What made you change from doing narrative work into documentary work, and what's that transition?
I think it's a couple different factors. One of which is that our school offers a program or a grant basically where you can apply to make a documentary and have some funding through the school.
Okay.
And that's externally funded by some alumni. And so Josh, Ollie, and we've had some classes together. We've worked a little bit together, but we wanted to make something on a grander scale.
Okay.
And something beyond the confines of the campus.
Yeah.
I had made one short documentary, which was also featured in the festival about the young girl who drives the hearse as her personal
That
vehicle.
is correct. That's correct. Actually, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been, I think, the first.
Yeah,
film that I
and
had submitted.
it did quite well. Many people really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was wonderful.
So it's all
to
about
show
the
it.
subject, right? It's all about who you get in front of that camera
Right.
to tell your story.
That was a really interesting project, but mostly I had done narrative besides that.
Right.
And then actually we had the kind of the impetus for this project is just us reaching out to various photographers just through Instagram DMs, trying to find an interesting subject. What kind of started it is we wanted to cover some remote place on Earth where the people are kind of self-sustainable.
And you decided that Iceland would make a good place.
Yeah, we thought about the Faroe Islands a
Yeah.
little bit, and just some of these Nordic countries, and then we kind of landed on Iceland because we came across this photographer named Ragnar Axelsson.
Of course.
He's this Icelandic photographer. He's one of the most famous photographers in Iceland, and we reached out to him on Instagram, and this is something I did over the last summer a lot too, which I was surprised. A lot of people actually respond to your cold DMs when you're looking for work, and so we messaged him and basically told him that we were trying to make this documentary, and got in a call with him, and he had just been planning to come out with this book called Behind Mountains,
Yeah.
which highlighted this community of farmers, sheep farmers in Iceland, who let their sheep roam throughout
Right.
the Icelandic highlands during the year.
So before you got this information,
Yeah.
you just knew you wanted to do something outside of the U.S. You want Iceland,
Yeah.
something
We
remote.
were-
So
we
you really
wanted
didn't
to,
have an
like-
idea of what you were going to do yet.
No. We wanted to focus on him. We were gonna like follow his photography at first, and then
Sounds
he was
good.
like, "These sheep farmers are crazy. You should go follow that instead." So that's just kind of how it.
And it was hard to narrow it down also because we would talk to him and he had all these just crazy stories and adventures, like from Greenland to Iceland to
Polar bear hunters. in
Yeah, and
Alaska.
so just like narrowing down on something that was a little bit more feasible for us, but also kind of a little bit out of our comfort zone and box. I'd
Is he
say.
part of your documentary?
He is. He's a very significant. He's like one of our main characters, actually.
Okay, good. Because I was thinking that he sounds like a perfect subject for a documentary.
Absolutely.
You know, but this is something very, very specific. So tell me about how you got kind of brought into that world. Of you said, yeah, this is what we need to do. And I know you said there's a lot of crazy stories.
Mhm.
So kind of just take us into like how you got into this project and got to Iceland and started shooting. Whoever, and I guess I should also say, like, what are your roles in this production? So
That's
tell
another-
us.
that's
So
a
what are
great
your?
question.
So tell me, like, are you all producing it? Who's directing it? Are you all
So-
writing it? Tell me.
Free-for-all.
Let's go down. Let's
So-
just go. You start,
Well,
Jesse.
So, because it's doc, it's like we don't have. Coming into it, we didn't really know what it was going to look like, and of course, it completely. We could not have predicted what happened when we actually went to go shoot.
That's the best way documentaries unfold. You know, unless you're doing something that's in the past and you're making a documentary about something that already happened,
Right.
you're doing something that's ongoing. So you never quite know where it's going to go. And we'll get into that
Yeah.
here.
Well, yeah, it's just like something that kind of shows that most directly is the fact that when we flew in to go shoot this documentary, we were supposed to go with Ragnar, with the farmers, because he goes up there most years, he takes photos, and we get to Reykjavik, and we go and we interview him, and then at the end of the interview, he says, "Oh, like, I'm so sorry, guys. I have this emergency assignment in Greenland. I'm not going to be able to come this year." And so obviously we kind of thought, like, is this trip over? Like, what are we going to do? And we had one other contact, which was one of the farmers. And we were able to meet up with him because he hadn't gone up yet. And he just gave us coordinates on Google Maps and said, you know, here are the coordinates. Because, of course, it's completely off-road. We're in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. And says, you know, see you tomorrow. Hope you make it. And
Bring your backpack
yeah.
and water.
And yeah, so that was kind of the first kind of hiccup in our trip that actually
But you did meet with him.
we were able to meet with Ragnar before we left, but he wasn't there to kind of like broker the interactions between
Right.
us and the farmers. So when we drove up there, we were meeting everyone for the first time, and while we were trying to get to know them, we also were kind of filming, but we didn't want to kind of shove the camera in their faces before.
You wanted to get them
Building
used to
trust.
you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is good.
And a lot of them don't speak English, so it's like some of them were just you're just like wave. Like, there's nothing really you can do. It's just like a crazy language to
Did
it.
you have an interpreter?
No.
Okay.
We didn't
so-
have it. Well, that farmer who gave us the coordinates, he speaks English very well. He's bilingual, so he was our translator for some of the characters that didn't speak any English, which we can get into later. There's
Yeah.
one particularly interesting character who's like the king of the mountains. He's like voted as the person who organizes the whole trip and tells everyone where to go and divides the groups up. And he's, I think, in his 70s now, but he didn't speak any English, so that farmer was kind of our through line.
All right. So we didn't delineate who's doing what on the film. So
Right.
are you all sharing responsibility? Are you all sharing director credit? Who's actually behind the camera?
Yeah.
It was pretty
It
equally.
was
yeah,
all of us.
So you're all in
wearing
it together.
the hats, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of split up all the work, and it was all like a lot of pre-production stuff. Then when we were there, it worked pretty well because the farmers like split up and go different areas every day. So we would each just take kind of like go with a different group and split up. So we each had a camera.
Some
And,
days, yeah. I like for particular instances, like for like interview setups, which are a 3-person job. Usually we'll have someone manning a camera, someone interviewing, and then someone on sound. And so we're kind of consistent in those roles.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, 2 of us usually would be shooting. And so we could get as much coverage as possible.
No, that's a good way to do, yeah.
Which is great. We had a lot of footage, which is also not the greatest because
Too much.
it's been quite a nightmare in post-production.
Well, you learn from every production, so,
Right.
and this is, I'm sure because you were on location, you were trying to cover as much as you possibly could. You don't want to come home empty-handed, so. I'll tell you what, tell me first, because we don't know what the name of this documentary is. What is the name of this documentary?
I'm going to try to pronounce it. It's Fjallferð.
And that's Icelandic.
Yeah, it's an Icelandic word, and it literally means like mountain walk or mountain hike, and that's what they call this whole thing. It's 5 days every September that they're going, and they collect thousands of sheep. I think it's over 4,000 or 5,000 sheep in the Highland Mountains of Iceland, and they bring them down in early September before winter hits, and divide them up amongst the farmers and bring them back down to the coast of Iceland.
Well, let's go to a clip, and then you could set this up. This is basically the intro to your film?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does this feature? A lot of interesting photography, number one. Yeah.
I can start with just like because there's a voiceover over this intro, and it's actually Ragnar, the photographer, and he's reading an excerpt from his latest book, Behind Mountains, about the region, just describing how it makes him feel, some of like the observations he has. He's really poetic in his language, which is really nice, and some of the interviews we had with him. He talks about how the mountains kind of seem like they're smiling back at you, and it's just very descriptive in a really beautiful way. So we had him read this passage, and then kind of before we get into what the doc is actually about, kind of set the stage with just kind of atmospheric cinematic shots of the area.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I mean, I have a friend here in Colorado Springs. She goes to Iceland twice a year. She just fell in love with it.
Yeah,
So, and I'm sure you're going to say the same thing.
yeah.
It's just a beautiful place, isn't it?
The landscape's pretty insane.
Yeah. So, well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at your clip, and we'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Cool.
Fegur fjallana þarna eru bara súrrealísk og litirnir eru bara ótrúlegir og þarna horfir á jökulána renna til hafs í svona eins og fingur eftir og velur sér lengstu leiðina sem hún getur því að þetta eitthvað sem bara það fallegt að þú vilt ekki yfirgefa það. Já, og svo sumar árnar eru heitar þannig að það rýkur úr þeim og einhvern veginn þetta verður svona blandað saman, kalt og heitt og þeim að ímynda sér því að þetta öðruvísi en allt sem menn upplifa.
Beautiful footage, beautiful scenery. It's a beautiful place. But there's more to your documentary than just the beauty of Iceland. What is the story about? What is the conflict that happens with the people that you're following and telling whose story it is? Who wants to go?
Josh, you can start off if you want.
Yeah, I guess when we were there, we were filming, we're like, oh, this is really cool, but like didn't really see where it was gonna go. And then all of a sudden we kind of started talking to them, and they were mentioning that it's actually like one of the most divisive topics in Iceland.
The sheep herding.
The sheep herding, yeah. And they said there's a lot of people in Reykjavik that are worried about environmental issues of the sheep. They think that the sheep are like causing soil erosion.
Oh.
Because the area is in these volcanoes and it erupts and there's just ash everywhere. But the farmers or the sheep are actually fertilizing the land. And usually they were saying that like 10 years ago it was all black sand and now it's all coming back, which you'll see in the film. It's like it's a very green area. which is all from the sheep fertilizing and keeping kind of that like regenerative process going.
So what's the issue then?
Well, I don't know. There's this battle between like the conservationists, a lot of professors and experts that are in the big cities, and then the farmers. And it's mostly just like hypotheses. They think like because due to like the sheep walking in these straight lines that it doesn't allow for foliage to grow. And one of the things that we did which we're considering not actually putting in the documentary just because it's getting a little too long is after we found out how controversial this is, it's like one of the most controversial issues in Iceland.
And you just stumbled upon it.
Yeah. We had a couple more days left, and we went back to Reykjavik, and first we were trying to call the conservation center, trying to get an interview
And no one would like
with
to
someone.
talk to us.
And no one wanted to talk to us because they thought we were part of the pro-sheep lobby that were trying to expose,
And you were trying to explain to them, no, we want your side of the story.
Exactly. And
Did they believe you?
Well, we kept getting kind of shrugged off, and then we were like, all right, we have one afternoon left. Let's just drive to the Environmental Institute in Reykjavik. And so we drove up, and this is kind of a longer story, but we saw this person standing outside, and he was smoking a cigarette, and we walked up, and we asked if he was a professor, if he'd be willing to talk to us. And first he says, "Oh, you guys are the ones who've been calling around." So it had already passed through the network.
And they had photos of you.
And he was very passionate anti-sheep. He was calling the sheep terrorists and that they're ruining his country. And so we asked, like, could we interview you? And he was like, "No, I don't want to be on camera."
Because that's a valid point of view, right? You wanted that.
Of course.
Yeah.
But he refused to be on camera. We tried to like record a little bit of him, but he was just like, I don't want to talk. I'm going to let you in the building. You can go upstairs. There might be someone who might be willing to talk to you.
Or you might be escorted out.
So yeah, so we went upstairs and we found this other professor who was willing to speak to us.
She was awesome.
Good.
She was like very
What?
middle ground.
Okay. That's why she wanted to talk to you.
Or she was
because
just very like
she understood both
she was
sides.
Like she wants there to be a night like she thinks they can exist like together and stuff, but she also was saying that like there's no concrete evidence that it's actually harming. Like they've done studies and stuff, and there's nothing saying the sheep are actually harming it. And so it's like.
And that's a good point of view. But did you get anybody who had that really
very strong
well, we
would have loved to, and also with her saying she like agreed to it, it's like kind of a stretch because we had to convince her for probably over 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Because she, again, like everyone else, was convinced that we were here to expose them and like spin it to like make them look like they don't know what they're talking about. So she did have more of a balanced view, so we weren't able to get that kind of flip side, but that also kind of raised some questions for us because we had just spent a week with these people and they had welcomed us into their cabin and like fed us.
Now you have to go back to them, and are they going to be suspicious of you at this point?
Well, we wouldn't go back to them, but it would be like if we were going to put in the doc basically saying like, no, actually what they're doing is wrong, and like look at like all this negative stuff that is happening as a result, that it probably would have a tangible effect on like the political whatever that's going on there.
And luckily what we found also was not that. It was not the case.
Right.
But it also wasn't, it didn't feel like, this is why we've been taking it out of our documentary right now, because it didn't feel like it added much to the story, and it honestly just took away from the experience that we were having with the farmers.
Right.
So
let's show another clip from the film, because this is getting very, very intriguing. So set it up. What are we going to see next?
So this is kind of in the middle of the trip. During this trip, it's about, I think the group that we were with was 70 or 80 farmers, and a lot of them are young adults or children who are accompanying their parents, but they're also doing work at a very high level in terms of rounding up the actual sheep. and they're very involved. And so this clip shows this young boy who I accompanied as he was herding these sheep off of this kind of like slanted hill area.
It was a mountain. It's pretty steep.
Wouldn't call it a mountain.
And you call it a hill, he calls it a mountain.
Definitely a mountain for this little kid. I think he's maybe like 7 years old, 7 years old, and he has his walkie-talkie and he's yelling to the other farmers on the other side of the mountain, and because it's a huge coordination to, especially on these steeper plains, to get the sheep where you want them to go. And so yeah, you can see from the clip he's very involved and very knowledgeable about the area, and a very intense kid. You can see he's definitely going to grow up with the tradition and hopefully continue this practice. Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Já, ég veit, við erum að passa að þeir koma ekki hingað. Þeir eiga að fara þangað. Dagur er farin af stað. Já, við erum á hreyfingu, sko. Við erum alveg að dála á hann.
You know, he called in the radio and asked if it was safe for you to be following him because of the shoes. It was quite cute. He was worried about you.
Gauji! Hvað, þú að passa skarðið?
Manni finnst það alltaf mjög mikið hlutverk og ég hef alltaf reynt að með krokkana að reyna að hafa eitthvað fyrir stafni, og út úr því kemur náttúrulega að þeir vilja vera með okkur líka þegar við stakka. Fyrst til að byrja með er það kannski ekki.
Nei, ekki fara að því. Ég held að það verður bara... Þú verður að Gauji, þú verður bara að muna að það gætu komið kindur út úr skarðinu. Það verður viðbúið.
One of the things that I've been thinking about since we've been talking about this story is, so you have these farmers and they've lived there for centuries. This is part of their life.
Yeah.
Why is there suddenly a problem now? Why suddenly they're being looked at as the enemy?
I think like partially it's because this area is getting a lot more attention. There's more like tourist activity because it's so beautiful.
You're right. Tourism in Iceland has grown incredibly over the past few years too.
So yeah, it's just, I think just generally they were kind of out there on their own. This area is not somewhere you can live year round, which is why they only spend a week when they come up here. And 100 years ago they would sleep in tents and bring all their food up with them because there's no animals besides the sheep. It's incredibly flat, no trees or anything. And now, yeah, it's just become certain areas that are bordering it have become just like higher interest for tourism, and people come in their camper vans, and so I think just that attention being brought to it has made people think like, or I guess as they're vacationing or whatever, they see the farmers and they see the sheep and they start questioning it, and that's why it's become like a bigger issue in recent.
Yeah, and like one of the things the farmers talk about is like, why do the people on bikes or hiking or something have more rights than like the sheep who've lived there forever? It's like, if anything's gonna be caught like harming the environment, it'd be like tourists driving around up there and people going off trail and like biking and stuff like that. It's
Those
like,
are valid points.
Yeah.
And they've been using it since, they said they've been using it since Iceland was settled and whatever, however,
many hundreds of years ago.
So the sheep, they've been doing it forever.
Yeah, so they feel they have a right to do what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's part of their livelihood. The weather's pretty erratic in Iceland. Did that cause you difficulties in your shooting schedule? And also, how long was your shooting schedule? How much time did you spend in Iceland?
Yes, the weather was a pain. We were there for about 2 weeks, a little bit more actually, accidentally. But yeah, I mean, September in Iceland is not like September here in Colorado. We experienced everything from beautiful sunny days to snowstorms, windstorms, rainstorms, all of the above. We just missed a couple of volcanic eruptions as well. But yeah, the weather was is definitely tricky to have all our gear out there and also coordinate interviewing people, especially outdoors. And all that. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have something to add.
They were like we left Colorado and it was like super nice out and like we were in shorts. I was like, it'll be cold there, but not like that bad. We brought like a rain jacket, and then we got there and the farmers were very concerned for they were like, oh man, you guys are not good. They all have like head to toe wool. They're just like decked out. They're so warm. And
so you needed to check with them first before you left here.
You should have, but they lent us some like wool sweaters for
good.
Some of the days, which are like amazing. You just wear one layer of Icelandic wool and you're like completely warm no matter like what the conditions are, rain or snow. But
that's a good selling point for the sheep.
Yeah, definitely.
But other than that, experiencing what you experienced in the filming of this documentary sounds like it was just an amazing time. I mean, as difficult as it probably was, especially once you ran into this conflict. But there's your story, right? Did that become your central story at that point, didn't it?
It became like adjacent to the central story because we have obviously the story, which is this 5-day trip and the natural conflicts that arise, like the weather.
So you only had 5 days to do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we were with the farmers up there for 5 days, and we did some interviews afterwards. Yeah. But
how much more time did you spend in Iceland after?
Yeah, so I think it was 2 weeks total. So we were like a week up there,
Good.
and then but yeah, I mean, like I think we'll show a clip of the windy day, but before we do that, during that day we had like a tent outside because they had a cabin that they would all sleep in. There's no service or anything; they just have this little kind of like log cabin, and we didn't sleep in the cabin. We either slept in the car or there's a tent outside where we kept all our stuff. And on this very windy day, we were out with the farmers, and I get back a little earlier, and the tent is just like ripped in like a million pieces.
From
and
the
our
wind?
stuff, and our stuff is just kind of strewn everywhere and soaking wet. But I honestly, I much prefer the conditions that we had to it just being sunny every day because you got to see what this place was like in every possible condition. So I think we were really lucky in that sense.
All right, let's take a look at this last clip. And this is just one of the days, or is this a series of days?
This is just one day.
Okay, 1 day in Iceland. Let's take a look.
Weather actually has big impact on how every day goes by. When you are out in nature, you sort of have to work with the weather, you have to work with the sheep and your horses. No day is alike. It's not easy to stand up there in 25 meters per second. That's a strong wind, a storm really. We are going back to cabin. Nobody is supposed to leave until we get the orders.
There must have been a lot of intense moments for you in wondering which direction this was going to go in. And I don't want to know the ending. But what was the takeaway for each one of you? I'll start with you, Ollie. What did you learn from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, on the basic filmmaking level, I definitely learned a lot about just trying to convey people's stories and also all this stuff we were talking about with weather, just being prepared. But then I think on kind of more of an emotional level, we had this whole conflict that we latched onto probably midway through our project, our production timeline at least. And we were so set on kind of involving that in the film, but then getting back, we realized that it didn't actually play a huge part and that it was more of kind of emotions and whatnot that played out through the film. So I think just being able to move on and find what flows for the film and what works for the film would be my biggest takeaway.
Josh.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a lot of like technical things were learned about how to make a documentary out in such like crazy environments. And then also, yeah, it was just very powerful, like seeing a tradition that's been going on for that long and like the importance of it, and seeing especially like the little kids and the younger generation that's growing up with it and hopefully gonna like be able to continue that tradition. And like I think just it was pretty eye-opening, and with the conflict of not being so like judgmental. I feel like there's a lot of judging going on of like, but people aren't actually, you know, going to like look and watch them and experience it, and being able to like see them work was very special. And like before maybe jumping to a conclusion of like what some people might think about it in the city. But yeah.
Jesse.
Yeah, I think, jumping off of what both of them said, especially in regard to the conflict, I think one thing that we really set out to do in this documentary is it's like not only for us to make a really cool project, but also can this tangibly help the farmers? Because this is something that they're very worried about, that this tradition could go away as, you know, these movements are gaining traction. And they're obviously in the minority here as well. And so, yeah, we just decided that not including all of the conflict and making that like a super, you know, the heart of the film, and instead showing like the resilience of these people and not only the hard work that they're putting in each year, but also kind of like the family aspects of this. Something we didn't mention before is we have this whole scene because every night they would go back to the cabin and they'd have songbooks that everyone sings to, and they play music and they dance, which we got to participate in, which was really cool.
Do you have footage of that?
We do have lots of footage of that. That's a whole different segment. So just we kind of saw that like the soul of this film was going to be the people, and keeping it about them would probably help them the most to show other people or the people who think that this tradition should stop, that, you know, there's a lot at stake, and that, you know, this is something that could go away and that would affect these people very deeply.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the final film, and thank you. Thank you for being here. I want to thank you, Ollie. I want to thank you, Josh. I want to thank you, Jesse, for being part. Do you have a name of your production company? Yeah. Okay. There you go.
I mean, you can shout out Caution Media.
Yeah, Ollie and we've been doing ski movies for since freshman year, and we have like Caution Media is like pretty much just our ski stuff. But now since this project and stuff, we don't really know what's gonna happen after we graduate, so we'll see where it goes. But it'd be sweet if the three of us could keep going. And
yeah, I hope so too.
We're planning another doc for next year in Japan, hopefully.
Oh, good. We'll have you guys come back. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, and this one's screening Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the Fine Arts Center, Cornerstone.
Yeah.
So, and at this recording, this is March 2025. So, hopefully, we'll start seeing your film out there.
Yeah. Definitely shown in Short Circuit or.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, you never know. If you give me some extra money. But, Anyway, thank you guys, and thank you all for joining us on Indie Film Forum. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Independent Film Forum. If you want to be in the know and be a good community citizen, check out Studio809podcasts.com to find many other community podcasts in the Studio 809 podcast family.